Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Dan and I'm here to bring you another FPL video. In this one, we're going to be looking at my team selection ahead of game week 30. We'll be looking at all things captaincy. We'll be looking at bench options and transfer possibilities for my team this week. We'll also have a look at how I got on in double game week 29. And of course, we'll be answering some key questions like, do we bring Haaland back into our FPL teams this week? Is he the default captain, or is there some other differential captains that we can look at? So I'm going to do a bit of a data breakdown there for you guys. We'll also be looking at the mini league and some other pieces. So a little bit of a longer video than usual for team selection. But of course, guys, if you do enjoy the content, then please smash that like button below. But without further ado, let's jump into game week 29 first and foremost. As you can see, I did opt to play my bench boost. And overall, I'm very, very happy with the outcome. We'll see shortly as I compare both game week 29 versus game week 27, as I know that was a kind of semi-popular bench boost option, as well as some people went from a wild card into game week 26 into a bench boost 27. So I'm going to do a brief comparison on what would have actually worked better for my team. And of course, yes, here in front of us, I scored 130 points with a -4. I got the net of 126. So nowhere near as high as some of you guys scores. Absolutely phenomenal job if you got anywhere near this or above, as I think that's a very, very strong week. It was a green arrow for me. I moved from 91k into 74k. I think I'm about 20 points away now from the top 50k, so very, very close, and I feel like I can now push between now and game week 38 for that type of finish. In terms of players to note really across the board, I won't go into full detail here, but Ollie Watkins, definitely man of the moment, 17 points across both games. We were discussing actually on my live stream about away versus home fixtures, and of course, yes, Watkins has just done a phenomenal job recently of scoring goals away from home, particularly under Emery, and he just showcased that again, only scoring 2 goals but still coming away with 17 points, which is the equivalent of a striker scoring a hat-trick in a single game week. So shows you how powerful double game weeks can be. I know there was some of you that were debating Watkins versus Havertz. I did recommend that I did prefer Watkins overall, and he did come out on top in this occasion, but we don't always get things right as content creators. I just feel like Watkins is definitely in form. My captaincy choice in the end, last 15 minutes of the stream, I decided to opt for March over Rashford. Unfortunately, that did mean a slight loss of about 6 points in terms of the captaincy overall there. But really, to be honest, I felt very, very unlucky again with March not returning across both of those games other than 1 assist. He had an absolute worldie of a game against Brentford in terms of the opportunities he had. But he actually ended up essentially facilitating more points for the David Raya owners, in my opinion, just because of the save points and how everything worked out. But overall, really, I'm very happy with this week. And moving forward in terms of how the squad is looking, it's in an okay shape. I could potentially roll a transfer, or we could be looking at another -4 in game week 30, as we will get on later in the video. But as mentioned, we will move on to the comparison of how my bench boost in game week 29 got on versus game week 27. So I did use my second wildcard in game week 26, as did most, as I felt like it was the best opportunity for my team to set me up over these next few weeks. My team was actually in a relatively good position, I would say, in game week 26. Maybe there was a bit of FOMO there for me, but ended up deciding to pull the trigger. I could have actually scored 1 more point if I would have hit the bench boost button for game week 27, with Gabriel scoring 14 points there in that single game week, with Odegaard also producing some returns and Kepa with some save points. I was just 1 point short in game week 29 of that game week 27 bench score. But all in all, I think actually that's about what I feel like I could have expected from the bench in terms of the double game weekers, because I played the bench boost true to how I would have played in terms of having a bench. I wouldn't have played Saka or Kane more than likely ahead of some of the double game weekers, so they ended up being on the bench and scoring 25. I could have shifted Saka into the starting lineup, for example, and swapped somebody out, like even a Rico Henry, for example, would have scored me two more points than Saka on the bench, but I didn't feel like that was a true reflection. So It's not necessarily right to just compare the two direct scores on the bench because it is the 15 players overall that really matters. But I just thought I would put it out there that, look, it's very, very close. So don't necessarily be disheartened if you've got a little bit less points or, you know, of course, congratulations if you've got more. But I think Game Week 29 was definitely the right decision overall. As we move through into the next section of the video, then we have got my transfer options. Now, as already mentioned, my route one pretty much is to roll the transfer. I'm not too sure how that my team feels in this scenario. I mean, you'll see as we go through the video, I haven't actually put any of the transfers in place, so you will get a feel of how the team would look if I did decide to roll. But my route two option is a -4, bringing in 2 Manchester City players. Now, I do see a little bit of a risk with this based on how many minutes these guys may get or have to sort of share across other members of the City squad just because of the fixture congestion. We'll go through that in a bit more detail shortly. But Game Week 30 and Game Week 31 for both of these guys look absolutely fantastic. I haven't got the ability to move from Ivan Toney to Erling Haaland in one move, unfortunately, because I opted for Bruno Fernandes and used quite a lot of money, obviously, to move for him from Odegaard for the double Game Week 29. The only way of me facilitating this move is to actually downgrade Fernandes, which I don't hate. I know he has got a double game week on the horizon as well, and potentially, yes, he could still, you know, let's say bag very, very good returns over the next few fixtures, as Man United have got some positive fixtures there. But the downside is that without Casemiro and from the eye test on the Brentford match, you could see how deep Fernandes is playing. Only offered 1 shot, which was off target, way off target, I might add as well, and only created 3 chances in the game. So I feel like in terms of having the money tied up in him, yes, I took a -4 last week to bring him in, but I'm just having second thoughts now after watching what's happened with United without Casemiro and where Bruno operates. I feel like it makes sense to bring in someone like Jack Grealish that I'm potentially setting up for a free hit in Game Week 32, so we can ignore the blank fixtures moving forward there in this scenario. And of course, I'll have Erling Haaland as a possible captain option, if not the obvious captain option as well. So that's my 2 routes. But let me know in the comments below what you would prefer for my squad. Of course, your own dilemmas, your own transfer decisions as well. Pop them in the comments, and I do try to reply to every single one of you. Let's move on to the next section then, as transfer routes and transfer plans are all summed up. The next section really is about this man, Erling Haaland. Yes or no? So a pros or a cons, whatever way you look at it, it's kind of the same type of thing. I'm struggling a little bit really to look at beyond the yes in this situation, to be honest. If you have a look at the sort of summary that I've put here in front of me, you have the fact that he is a goal-scoring machine. You've got the fact that he's got a fantastic fixture against Southampton. You've got 1.01 expected goals per 90 with him, so you can almost guarantee that he's nearly expected to score in those 90 minutes if he gets them. And he is the top scoring FPL asset of this season so far with 203 points, and only going to grow on that by now and the end of the season, essentially. I did sell him with the view of bringing him back in. I just wasn't sure when, and the closer we get to the deadline of Game Week 30, the more nervous I am about not owning him because of his high ownership. Essentially, he could be a complete rank destroyer. I put rank killer there, but I think destroyer is probably even a better word for it based on how many people will probably captain him as well. I just feel like in terms of the no, we have the simple fact of the fixture congestion, and that's what's giving me the most headache, I think, here in terms of what do we do with him. The fixture congestion is as follows. They play Southampton away in Game Week 30, then followed up by, obviously, your 2 legs of Bayern Munich. So on the midweek, following the Southampton fixture, they then play Leicester at home in between in Game Week 31, followed by Bayern Munich away in the midweek following the Leicester fixture, and then they blank in Game Week 32, but they've actually got Sheffield United in the FA Cup. So it's a continuous run, and then of course in 33, that's when they play Arsenal. So out of all of these fixtures, because Sheffield United are a championship side, I would probably say that the likelihood is that Alvarez would start that fixture. So then you have to ask the question that, yes, he's just come back from return, but he's got 4 fixtures in the matter of essentially 2 weeks to play. Now, we've seen already at the beginning of the season that we thought, and we had these concerns earlier on when the Champions League first started, and we were having these debates about how many minutes is he going to get, is he fit enough, will he stay fit? And to be honest, he's proven us quite a little bit wrong, I would say, for the most part. He's absolutely stayed fit. We've also seen that Pep doesn't like to risk him. So there is an option here that only maybe 60, 70 minutes get played against Southampton. The problem I have about not owning him again is the fact that he could be that captaincy shout and he can score a hat-trick in 40 minutes. He can score a hat-trick in 20 minutes. So it's almost like even if he doesn't get the 90 minutes across Southampton and Leicester anyway, and he's more focused for the Bayern fixtures, going without him, I think, is a very, very big risk. So there's kind of the summary. Now, take from it what you will. I'm not here to make the decision for you, but I can absolutely see the plus side of going without him, using the money somewhere else potentially, and trying to get some upside in other individuals. I just feel like with those two fixtures, with Southampton and Leicester in between those Bayern fixtures, it's very difficult to ignore him because they are so good. If the Arsenal fixture was somewhere in between, then I could argue maybe there is something to consider there. But in all honesty, with those two, I'm finding it very difficult to look past him right now. But let me know your comments below again, or thoughts on this in the comments below, because again, I'm really torn, to be honest. But we'll get there. I'm sure I'll decide one way or the other come the deadline. Moving on into the actual team selection part of the video now. This is how I'm going to line up from a defensive point of view. We have got a double up of Chelsea and a double up of the Newcastle boys. I was very impressed with Trippier, Botman, Burn and Schär as that back four for Newcastle across both fixtures. I thought they did very, very well. Obviously, unfortunate that they've conceded in that second fixture against West Ham. I would have argued that was probably one of the easier fixtures for them, if not the easiest fixture for them. But of course, coming away with a 14-pointer from Trippier, Botman 9 points. It was still great across those two games. And I just feel like against Brentford away, it's a tricky fixture, absolutely. But I think that Newcastle have proven that they will potentially be challengers for the top four this season. And Eddie Howe has done a fantastic job with that back four. So I think they justify their position. With the news of Frank Lampard returning, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about having a double Chelsea defence, to be honest. I could put Raya in goal instead of Kepa. I'm absolutely 100% going to be locked in on Chilwell, though, as I think Wolves away, yes, it's an away fixture, but the attacking returns are looking very, very likely. I think to only come away with a 9-pointer with Chilwell in the double game week was a little bit unfortunate. Plenty of shots on target, plenty of chances created from him as well. Just Chelsea aren't finishing the chances he does create, though. So that's the only concern with him. But absolutely, I would prefer to play Chilwell over someone like, let's say, Rico Henry or Estepinian, who I've got as other options on the bench. So Kepa potentially will make way for Raya as a possibility. But I think in the form that Newcastle is showing recently, especially after putting 5 against West Ham in midweek, I feel like they're going to be putting a run of form together now. And against Brentford, I feel like there's some goals in that game. So I think the double up on both sides makes the most sense for my squad. Moving into the midfield then, we have got Rashford, Maddison, Bruno Fernandes, March and Saka. Of course, Saka was rested against Leeds last week. I only imagine that is because of the I guess you could say, trickier fixture on paper with Liverpool. I haven't seen any press conference details about was he left out for any injury concerns or anything like that, but definitely hope he makes the starting lineup once again. The only problem I have with Saka, of course, is that Liverpool were heavily rotated midweek against Chelsea. So, Trent's going to be fresh, for example, but I still think that, in his form, he could definitely do some damage against Liverpool. March is a tricky one. Potentially he would become bench option if I did move for Grealish and Haaland, which we'll see very, very shortly. But Fernandes there, Maddison, Rashford, Bruno and Rashford is a little bit difficult because it's a 12:30 p.m. kickoff. I think Everton at home is a great fixture for them, but we've seen what Deitch has done with the back line of Everton at the moment. They're finding it more and more difficult, or teams are finding it more and more difficult to break them down and score against them. So I think actually Rashford is 100%, I think, a keep just because he is the man in goal-scoring form for United. But I think Bruno, in terms of his deeper position now, is definitely a questionable pick now. Maddison against Bournemouth at home, I'm just really hoping that some attacking returns can come from him. Otherwise, he no doubt is going to be on the chopping block for me in the coming weeks. But I think Bournemouth at home, it doesn't make sense to sell him for Grealish with such a good fixture. Then we look at the captaincy, the strikers first of all, before we move into captaincy. We've got Harry Kane against Brighton and Ollie Watkins against Nottingham Forest at home. Two guys in absolute form at the moment. Kane is just Mr. Consistent. I wouldn't necessarily say he's got the explosivity at the moment to get those really big haul, 2 goals, 2 assists in him at the moment. Him and Son haven't linked up in particularly well in recent weeks, for example. It just doesn't seem to be as free-flowing as it has been before with Spurs. However, he is the man on penalties. He's the captain of the team, and it just feels like when Kane gets an opportunity, it's going to be close to scoring. So I just think he's a no-brainer to keep hold of for now. And of course, Ollie Watkins is the man of the moment once again in terms of form. 17-pointer in that double game week was absolutely perfect, and absolutely one of the most, I think, obvious captain shouts if you don't go for Erling Haaland. I think the statistics, which we'll look at in a moment as we break it down, will make more sense as to why I think he is a good captaincy shout. I still think Kane could be. You could argue that Rashford, although with a 12:30 p.m. kickoff, we know how sometimes those can put us off. And of course, Saka as well. We know what he can do against any opposition in terms of his attacking threat. So there's plenty of options for us this week if we didn't go for Erling Haaland. But I think if I do go for the -4, what will end up more than likely happening is Bruno Fernandes will be dropped for Grealish. And then, of course, Solly March would be dropped to the bench, and Ivan Toney would then be Erling Haaland. And then I would move into a 3-4-3 formation. So that's what we're looking at. As a backup plan, though, if I do decide to roll the transfer, I do think that Ollie Watkins will more than likely be my captain. And this is where I think I'll move into the next section that I haven't really done before in terms of a full breakdown of captaincy data, let's say, on a video. Sometimes I've done it on streams. I've kind of done it on the fly and been speaking to people offline, I suppose you could say, about different options. But here's what I think of those differential captains or alternatives to Haaland. And here's the table that I've essentially created based on the last 4 fixtures that their opponents have played. So if we look at Ollie Watkins, first of all, he plays primarily a central position. In the last 4, his opposition in Nottingham Forest have conceded 12 chances centrally. You'd also say that he is the man in form, right? So although 12 isn't the highest number on this table, you could say that under Emery, Watkins has found a really good purple patch in terms of his form, and that would be justification enough to captain him. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to put this table together, just to almost back up my own kind of eye test and reasoning, which I'd absolutely implore all of you to do, right? There's no one way of looking at FPL. There's multiple ways you can look at it, and I just like a combination of multiple things, including data, eye tests, and so on. Moving on to Maddison then, as you can see again, centrally, 13 chances conceded by Bournemouth, but Leicester are just not in goal-scoring form at the moment, which is why I'm put off a little bit by the James Maddison captain pick. I think ultimately, yes, he's created a lot of chances. Yes, he's on set pieces sometimes. He can absolutely score a worldie of a free kick, but the problem is the chances he's creating for Daka, for Iheanacho, and even Jamie Vardy, for example, if he came off the bench, I feel like they're not putting the goals away. And of course, we can see that now that Leicester are now in a relegation fight, deep in it, in fact. And it's going to be a case of actually getting on the end of those Maddison chances in this fixture especially. So let's see what happens, but I just don't think he is a captaincy shout. As for the 2 United boys, as mentioned, 12:30 p.m. kickoffs. Of course, Rashford does come there with the chances conceded in the last 4 for Everton on the left-hand side. They are joint top, or Rashford is joint top, with Saka, with the 14 chances conceded by their opposition. So absolutely, I can see why some people may leave the captaincy armband on Rashford if you did have him for the Game Week 29 captaincy. But ultimately, this fixture congestion that United have got at the moment as well, I'm not so sure. You know, we only played last night. We've got the 12:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. I'm not so sure that we can trust the armband on him. Yes, he is in form. Yes, they have conceded many chances down the left-hand side, Everton. But I feel like I said, with Sean Dyche as well, under a transformed defensive outfit, they're looking really sharp. So I'm not so convinced that I would go for one of the United boys. As we can see there with Fernandes as well, to summarise or to just have a look at, we've also got 11 chances conceded as the average across the central and the right-hand side for Everton. The problem again is the deeper role here that Fernandes is playing. He's filling in the void that Casemiro seems to be leaving. Looking at McTominay and Sabitza's position in the Brentford game, they were much more progressive in their runs. They were on the edge of the box, let's say, as opposed to Fernandes being actually on the edge of the centre circle from a defensive or a holding position. So very, very hard to produce anything from those types of positions. And I just feel like it's maybe a little bit risky once again to go for him in terms of the captaincy. Then we'll move on to Harry Kane. As already mentioned, he has just been Mr. Consistent, so I can also see the appeal there. And with Bukayo Saka, he was, of course, facing, or he will be facing, a heavily rotated Liverpool side that, of course, were essentially, they'll be back to their full strength, I would say. The heavily rotated side has already happened in midweek. Klopp obviously understands the dangers of this Arsenal fixture at the weekend. But as you can see, on the right-hand side, they do concede quite a significant amount of chances. So potentially Saka could be a differential captain this week. It just all comes down to that fact, though, in my opinion, that are you moving for Erling Haaland or not? If you are moving for him, I just don't see anyone else to be the captaincy. I just feel like Erling Haaland is the man of the moment. But if you do want to go for differential, here's the list of names. So let me know in the comments below what you thought about this section of the video. Was it useful? Has it helped your decision making in any way? I will feature it in future videos based on your feedback as well. So let me know, guys. Let me know. Moving on to the video, moving through the video again, sorry, we've now got the mini league. We have seen some movement, though, there from a couple of green arrows. As you can see, Patrick, you can see Yanne, you can see George, all moving up through the ranks there. Of course, it's Sarah, that team at the top there, 1963. I think this is only based on the amount of transfers that have been made between him and George. So first and second place, absolutely tied on total points there, but we've had some fantastic scores in the Link Mini League here. As you can see, 132, 156, 152, really phenomenal stuff, guys. So congratulations for that. I can see FPL Boo Boo, you have dropped down the ranking slightly there, but I did take a look at your team before making the content, and I can see that you obviously didn't decide to play your bench boost, rightly so, as well, as I think there was only about 5 or 6 points on there. And of course, you have still got your second wild card, your free hit, and the bench boost. So I have absolutely no doubts that you will move back up in those rankings. But if you haven't already, then there is a link in the description for the mini league. It's completely free to join, and at the end of the season, I will be giving away a football related prize to the winner. Of course, there is also the code as well, rather than the link to join. So feel free to do that. And then last but not least, we'll be talking about the Content Creators League. Now, this is a mock league based on FPLGameWeek.com. It's a website where you can essentially just see where you would stand against all of the content creators across Fantasy Football Scout, Hub, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. Everyone's covered in terms of somebody who creates content in one way or another. And you can see here, I'm currently 22nd, 1,928 points. I'm about 20 points off the top 10, which I'm very happy with. You can see FPL Nymphria there in the top 10 spot with 1948 points. They're only 20 points behind her, but there are very formidable names here. You can see Harry and Ben. Harry's actually closed the gap on Ben quite significantly now, with only 4 points separating first and second spot. We've seen Ross actually drop down a little bit here. We can see Tom from WGTA. We can see Joe from Scout. There's some great names here, and to kind of pitch yourself and see where you measure against them is something that I'll always recommend to do, just so that you can progress and continue to improve on this game. But there we go, guys. That's going to wrap up the video. So thank you very much for tuning in. It was a little bit longer of a team selection than usual, covering off a few key points. I could have split it up into 2 videos, but I do hope you enjoyed the content. Of course, if you're new to the channel and you did like what you saw today, then absolutely feel free to subscribe to me, completely free of charge, and I'll be here by your side for the rest of the season. We'll have a live stream on Saturday as well for the Game Week 30 deadline, so remember to tune in for that. But if I don't see you then I will hopefully see you in another video soon, guys. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one.